This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
It'll grow. What is up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson, Michael Remis with you, and we got a very busy show today. Lots to get to, and we'll still continue to break down the aftermath of the Winnipeg Jets season. Looking forward to having Murat of The Athletic, who was there for it all this weekend, and Ted Wyman as well. Now, we'll get Ted's thoughts on the Jets offseason, but the reason why we wanted to have Ted on today is that we finally got some Bombers to talk about. Of course, rookies are going to be, what do we see, in about, 11 days getting to work here? Or actually even less, about a week, and then the main camp starting in about 11 days. But it was the CFL Draft last night, and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers made some selections. We'll talk about those with Ted, and maybe a little bit of a look ahead to the upcoming training camp and season for the Blue and Gold. So Teddy Drip coming up first, and then Murat. Big one tonight for the Winnipeg Ice and the Manitoba Moose, for that matter. Both teams on the road in playoff action. Moose in Milwaukee. Dan Fink's going to join us tomorrow in between games 3 and 4 in Milwaukee. And a little later on today, we'll set up a potential clinching game for the Ice, looking for the sweep over the Saskatoon Blades when Munz joins us from Saskatoon a little bit later on. But before you get too excited about that sweep, let's not forget that Saskatoon was down 3-0 in their last series and came back to win in 7, was down 2-0 to Connor Bedard and the Regina Pats. So they have been a very tough team to kill, but this is the opportunity for the Ice to do that. So we'll get to some playoff talk of a Western Hockey League variety for our local squad a little bit later on from Munzy as well. Just before we bring Michael Remis in, get to last night's action in the Stanley Cup Playoffs, a big shout out to all of our great sponsors that make it happen every day with us. Winnipeg Goldeyes, Assiniboia Downs, both starting off their live seasons a little later on this month. Modern Man Barbershop, Aquatech, Manitoba Battery, Canadian Club, Vita Health, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Princess Auto Consolidated Supply, Royal Sports, BP, Little Brown Jug, Aikens Lake, Breezy Bend Golf Course, and our great partners over at Coolbet. Big edition of the Lock Shop today. Check it out and subscribe. Lock Shop Bets on YouTube and at Lock Shop Bets on Twitter as well. Let's get Remis in here. Remo, what's going on? How are you?
Feeling good. Counting down here to night 2 of round 2 Stanley Cup Playoffs. We start off with night 1. Also, I don't know. It's like nice outside. I can drive around.
It's gorgeous outside right now.
I'm wearing sandals like outside. It's fantastic. So, yeah, feeling good. And we're heading here into it's the Jets off season, but no shortage of topics here on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
No, but you know what? Winnipeggers always like to talk about the weather, and considering how much we bitched about it for a long time, especially through March and April, waiting for spring to come, it's here, folks. 20 degrees right now in the city as we go live just after 1 p.m. A high today of 23, and beautiful temperatures throughout the rest of the week, 19, 18, 20, 21. So things are going to get greening up a little bit, very quickly. The golf courses are opening. Breezy Bend open on the weekend. The boys of summer are back as the Goldeyes get going today with training camp, and lots of good things as long as Mother Nature cooperates. And it is supposed to be a hot summer, so it took a little while for spring to get here, but it is here, and we are very thankful for it. And of course, with spring comes playoff hockey. We mentioned that both the Ice and the Moose are in action tonight. We will get to that. But man, Reem, what a night last night in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And it really did seem like the teams that won Game 7s on the road just continued right on where they left off in their round 1 series. The Florida Panthers stunning the Maple Leafs at Scotiabank Arena in Toronto, and then the Seattle Kraken spoiling what was and still should be remembered as an absolutely legendary comeback story of Joe Pavelski, who left round 1 in really bad shape after that devastating hit from Matt Dumpa knocked him out of the series. Pavelski comes back, puts a team on his back, scores 4 goals last night, but it wasn't enough as Yanni Gourde, the former Lightning player, was the overtime hero, beating Jake Ottinger on a perfect shot on a rebound. I mean, a typical NHL playoff overtime goal. And the Kraken strike first. Both road teams getting the win last night.
Yeah, when Yanni Gourde scored for the Kraken yesterday in overtime, I couldn't help but remember your conversation with Dave Poulin yesterday where you talked about Andre Palat, his impact with the Devils. Now another former Lightning, still in the Stanley Cup playoffs while the Lightning are eliminated. And yeah, absolutely legendary game by Joe Pavelski, but I do wonder if it's that comeback by Dallas is now like in the same era, same range of Adam Lowry's Game 3 tying goal. Sorry, I don't know if it's too soon to bring that up where you have this like awesome comeback, but ultimately if you don't lose in overtime, like who's going to remember Joe Pavelski coming back? But incredible, great to see him in the lineup. We weren't sure how long he would be out, but I'm very surprised. The Kraken keep proving me wrong every single game. You think, short rest here for the Kraken. Dallas has been waiting around. Dallas is at home. Kraken got to travel from Colorado to Dallas, but it's the road teams that, as you said, keep getting it done here, and the both teams that won the Game 7s carry the momentum in. And I don't know. I think everyone in our chat wants to see Toronto lose, but I don't know. I find myself hoping for the Canadian teams. Maybe because I took them in my bracket. I think that's exclusively why. It's selfish reasons.
A Leafs Edmonton Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, I want it.
Would drive a lot of people crazy, but I'll be honest, it would be unbelievable.
Yes.
I mean, there is, listen, at this point of the year, if your team is out, which for most of us, that is the case, you want to see the stars in the National Hockey League. You want to see great matchups. And I can't imagine one, at least on paper, that looks juicier than McDavid and Draisaitl going up against Matthews and Marner. And certainly the folks at the TSN and Sportsnet executives' offices are getting pretty excited about the possibilities of that. But the Leafs can't worry about a potential series against the Oilers. They got to worry about the Florida Panthers. And like I said yesterday on the program, this Panthers team, the way they were able to survive against the Boston Bruins and knock off that top team in the National Hockey League seems to have something special going on right now. And none of it happens without Bobrovsky making that save in game number 5 in the waning seconds on that breakaway from Brad Marchand that literally saved their season. And I'll tell you what, Remis, since then, Bob has just got better. He looked like prime Andrei Vasilevsky last night, making some huge saves. And once again, Matthew Tkachuk, the most impactful player on the ice, maybe in the entire playoffs so far, with all due respect to McDavid and Draisaitl, making the difference last night. What a win for Florida, drawing first blood in their series.
Okay, is Bob good again? Because
he's back. Bob is back.
Because, when you were talking yesterday, I forgot that he had won, 2 Vezina trophies. Bob? Like, he's kind of known now.
That's how he got $10 million.
Yeah, he's kind of known now as being the most overpaid goalie in the league, but he had to get $10 million, or earn that somehow. And I mean, he had 901 save percentage this year, 358 goals against.
He lost his job. Paul Maurice rode Alex Lyon, much like the Jets rode Connor Hellebuck at the end of the season into the playoffs.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. 901. And even in the overall in the playoffs, his numbers have been 901. That's kind of crazy. But the last couple of games, he's been very good. So Bob's back, I think, Huss. And you heard from Leafs fans, we got the chances. We were the better team. We just couldn't finish. And I know we had said Jake Ottinger was maybe the best goalie left But is Bob now the best goalie left in the playoffs? We'll have to see how this series goes. But, I mean, you've got the best goalie, the best skater, Matthew Tkachuk. Man, it could be upset season for Florida here. And it was only one game, and you can't get too high or too low. But Bob. That's all I got, Bob. That's it.
Bob is back.
I think he's back.
Well, I was doing the lock shop with Dusty, of course, in Edmonton, but JBM from Coolbet joined us from Toronto, and he's a big Leaf fan, and they're, I think, a little rattled at how Bobrovsky looked last night, and the fact that the Panthers came in and took care of business in Toronto in game number 1. That being said, I mean, from a Leafs perspective, they've got to be feeling still confident from the way that they came back against Tampa. But I really did think there might be a bit of a letdown. And it wasn't like they didn't play well last night. I thought they did. Their power play looked good. But you got to score. And the one thing that Florida has been doing consistently is putting a ton of pucks on net. And that really helps out at this point of the year, considering the weird way some of those pucks go in. So first blood for Florida. First blood for the Seattle Kraken in overtime last night. And tonight we get game 1 between the Oilers and the Vegas Golden Knights in Jersey and Carolina. And a quick note, certainly even more so for, as I know, Mark Stone, despite playing for the Vegas Golden Knights and not getting the warmest welcome at Canada Life Center during the playoffs, has a lot of fans around here. Very concerning look from Vegas practice yesterday, Remo, as Mark Stone was obviously in discomfort, left early, did not return. This is a guy that is returning from back surgery. He's had a number of back problems over the last couple years. I'll tell you what, if Mark Stone is not able to play at the level that he really did from about the second half of game 2 through the rest of the series against Winnipeg, that is going to compound the already huge challenge awaiting Vegas in terms of the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, do we know if Mark Stone's parents are going to be at the game tonight? We're going to check in on how they're feeling, but I did see the video of him walking off, and doesn't look great, but I don't know. Like, remember game 1 where they were like, "Oh, Mark Stone's huffing here on the bench."
No kidding, he was huffing and puffing. He hadn't played in 3 months.
Yeah, and then he came back and dominated the rest of the series. So, I mean, didn't look great. There's also a video of Connor McDavid, like, shaking out his knee in practice. I mean, we'll have to see. They have really good medication they give these guys so they don't feel pain. And I don't know. Well, we'll have to see what the lineup is.
The back is something that's so different than anything else. And, anyone that's had, major back issues or back surgery or anything will tell you that, those muscles and the pain that comes along with having issues around there can be absolutely debilitating. And I had a bit of a chill looking at Stone walking off that way, just knowing that, this is not a strained muscle. This is not him feeling sick. This is something that, has really impacted him in the last couple of years. And as good as he looked at times in that series, the bottom line for Vegas is that they're going to need a really effective Mark Stone to counter what Edmonton is bringing to them tonight. And I think for everyone involved, we hope that Mark Stone will be okay, and we hope he'll be able to play, because this series won't be the series that I think everyone hopes it'll be without Mark Stone. So that one goes tonight. And then, of course, we've also got that other series that in some ways I think is sort of forgotten. Carolina home to Jersey, Reem. And I think I'm going to ride with the Devils tonight. When you look at what teams that won Game 7, that went to Game 7, have done so far on the road in game number 1 of the series. This is a little different, though, in the fact that both Florida and the Kraken were significant underdogs last night. The Devils aren't. And when you look at Carolina's, injuries with Pacioretty out, with Svechnikov out, now with Teuvo Teravainen out, the big question is who is going to step up along with Sebastian Aho to get the offense that they're going to need, because that Jersey team is so fast, so skilled, so talented. They are going to they're going to get their chances on whether it's Freddie Anderson or Antti Ranta in the net. And I think the other great thing for Jersey is that they don't have a long wait, because this Akira Schmid, who came in after game 2, has been absolutely lights out in net, out-dueling Igor Shesterkin. And I think when you have a player like that, you just want to get him right back into the net, and that's what Lindy Ruff's going to do tonight.
Yeah, we have seen a trend here of these Game 7 teams winning, so I don't mind you taking the Devils. I think if the Hurricanes are an underdog, I would take the Hurricanes. Dom from The Athletic, I trust his projections a lot. He has this pretty much coin flip 52% for the Hurricanes. So I would take them as an underdog. I know they're missing some guys, but you like their team game. Their defense, very strong. Wherever their goalie has been, I started with Ranta. It's been solid. So I'm leaning Hurricanes. Very good, very well-coached team. They're too good to get coach of the year, Rod Brindamore has. They're too good. You want to be coach of the year, you have to be a bad team, the year before, and then improve. His window for coach of the year expired. So I like Carolina here. They have had guys step up, Marty Natchez and Stefan Nosen, who's playing power play 1. These aren't really household names, although Natchez has had a really good season, but they do have some guys.
Jarvis is going to have to be a massive player in this series if they're going to win.
Yeah, and also for New Jersey, a lot of talk about Timo Meier after that hit from Jacob Trouba. He's a game time decision. He did wear the bubble, the bubble in practice, so we'll see what happens to them. It's interesting. Morgan Barron goes with the cage, Timo Meier going with the bubble, all personal preference. We'll have to see if he's in. I'm going to, assume that he's not going to play after that. We all saw what happened there, so maybe he'll take an extra day. Well, I have no idea how he's feeling, but we'll see.
Yeah, and again, they're not going to tell us, check in at the start of the
upper
game.
Body.
Was it upper body?
They told everyone upper body.
Okay,
yeah, sure.
Well, I would agree. That certainly was an upper body injury with what Jacob Trouba did to him during Game 7 earlier this week. Just before we move on from the NHL, we will focus in on the Jets, of course. NHL trophy nominees. Lady Byng out, Point, Kopitar, and Hughes, and the Selke, Bergeron, Nico Hischier, who will play tonight, and that's a great honor for Nico Hischier, and Mitch Marner, Reem.
Yeah, well, it's all those Toronto voters, of course. A winger getting nominated. I don't know if you see that too often. And this is why, I don't understand all the talk about Bergeron retiring. He's still at the top of his game. He's probably going to, win the Selke again. So I don't know why.
Lifetime Achievement Award.
You think? No. I think the numbers show that he's still elite.
I'm joking. He's
okay.
It should be basically renamed the Patrice Bergeron Award. For how great that he's been. Listen, the reason why everyone was talking about Bergeron retiring is that it sure as hell looked like it after they lost to the Florida Panthers, with him kind of doing a special, hug or moment with all of his teammates and the look on his face. Hey, the NHL, he's going straight to the Hall of Fame whenever he's done. For the Boston Bruins, it will be a massive, massive loss. And the potential of losing Bergeron and Krejci, your top 2 centers in one offseason. Sound familiar?
Well, it's funny. Everyone talks about Vegas circumventing the cap and stuff. I forgot that those 2 guys signed $2 million contracts with, these bonuses where they're actually going to take up cap space next year because they went over the cap. But I still don't know why those guys helped out the Bruins, took such value contracts. I think they were both were they $2 million? Yeah, Krejci took $1 million base salary, and Bergeron was $2.5 million. Nice, really nice guys. Those 2 are, and I don't know. Is he gonna retire, or is this every year? It's is Bergeron gonna retire, and we do this every year? But what a great career!
They're gonna beg him to try to stay. But, and as far as asking why they did it, I think it's pretty simple. They wanted to win a championship.
Yep.
Listen, I think you can make the argument that Patrice Bergeron has been criminally underpaid for most of his career. However, credit to him, he didn't sulk about it. He didn't make a big deal about it. All he did was go out night after night and be one of the best players in the National Hockey League. And then when given the opportunity to max out money or play with the team that he loves, he's been with his entire career, and work within the framework of the salary cap to play for a team that was historically good through the regular season before a real disappointing playoff spot. He did it. So I give him listen, it's lucky. It's fortunate to be a team like Boston. If the team sucked, he wouldn't have done that. I can guarantee you that. But that's part of what it is when you are a legit Stanley Cup contender. You have guys that, that the lure of potentially winning is worth more than an extra $1 million on your checks. And most of these guys at that time, if they're able to make those decisions, have made their money. They're set for life. If they're coming back, it's about that competitive fire and the competitive spirit. And that's certainly what he had. All right. As I said, Ted Wyman's going to join us in a couple minutes. I did see a question in chat. And there's been a lot of talk online about the Jets not playing Axel Jonsson-Fjällby an extra game to retain RFA rights on Axel. Listen, I understand there's a lot of people that want to take shots at Jets management, and there's a lot of things that, are there. This ain't it, if you ask me. People are acting as if they didn't know this or they weren't aware of this, whatnot. Listen, the bottom line is Axel was sent down to the Moose. Now, I'm actually a fan of Axel. I would have preferred that he actually got into a few more games. But when coaching and management decide that they're playing other players, they're doing that for a reason. And the reason was trying to get this team into the playoffs. Axel was a waiver pickup. I mean, this is not a guy they've invested a ton in or anything like that. And what the danger is that if you do get him those and you qualify him, you know what might happen? They might accept a qualifying offer, and then they're on the books with a contract for the upcoming season. I think it's quite clear that the Winnipeg Jets have a very wide open view on their roster. The big questions are about the guys at the top, and you can say, well, at least it would have given them that opportunity or that right. Guys, he was there the entire season. I'm pretty sure they'd made their decision and would have understood whether that was an important thing for them to do or not. Much like Eric Comrie last year, and a lot of people made a big deal about it. RFAs get unsigned or are not qualified or are left out all the time. I think there was 85 or so last year in the NHL. So, I mean, when we're picking the things to get bent about, a waiver pickup and their contractual status for next year, I would argue, way, way, way down at the bottom of the list. And I think we saw when he was sent to the Moose that they'd made their decision on whether he was a big part of this team in the present and going forward. Some of you might be big fans of Axel. As I said, I liked him, but I'm not sure that this is the reason to go get the pitchfork. So, all right, we're going to talk to our guy Ted Wyman. I can't wait to talk to Ted about what he thought about what we heard on the weekend with the Jets, and of course, Winnipeg Blue Bomber training camp. But just before we do that, got to thank a few of our sponsors right out of the gate. And of course, as I mentioned right off the bat, it's May 3rd. The boys of summer are back and training camp has started for the Winnipeg Goldeyes today. Teams working out at Shaw Park today and tomorrow, and then heading out to Fargo for preseason games in Fargo and Milwaukee over the course of the next week. Season opens on May 11th, and the home opener is May 19th against Lake Country here as the Goldeyes open up their 30th season. The countdown is on to Craft Beer Corner, to Goldie Dogs, to everything that comes with summer and the Goldeyes. If you haven't already, or you are considering maybe a group outing, season tickets, group mini packs, get on over to goldeyes.com today and count yourself in for the upcoming season. And we'll see you at the ballpark, and stay tuned for a couple WST nights we're going to put together, or hopefully we can all get together at the barbershop. Hey, our friends at Modern Man Barbershops are one of our newest sponsors, have 8 locations in Winnipeg, including the newest locations on Plessis Road and on Pembina Highway. And Modern Man Pembina is hosting a grand opening event on Sunday, May 7th. From noon to 5, receive a haircut for $9 with proceeds to Cancer Care Manitoba Foundation. And the first 100 people get a free lunch from the Jeepney food truck. This is going to be awesome. As you can see, I need a cut. I'll be heading down there on Sunday. Maybe we'll see you there. You can visit their Instagram at Modern Man Barbershops for more info. And if you do need a cut, beard shaping, shaves, color services, and more, Modern Man's there for you with 8 locations. You can book your look and make an appointment at modernmanbarber.com. We're starting to feel spring. Summer's right around the corner. Make 2023 the year you take the plunge with Aquatech. Visit aqua-tech.ca to design your own custom pool. Their team can provide on-the-spot finance or pricing from designers as well as financing options that suit you. While you're thinking of the backyard, what about the home? Whole home renovations start with Aquatech as well. With thousands of renos as their foundation, let Aquatech upgrade any space in your home. Aquatech's ready to make your reno dreams a reality. Learn more about design, pricing, and financing options at aqua-tech.ca. We're talking golfing. Breezy's open right now. You're thinking about getting out to the cottage. Well, Manitoba Battery continues to celebrate their 10th birthday and are blowing out golf cart batteries at incredible prices. Here you go, folks. Right now until May 6th, 6-volt golf cart batteries are $167. 8-volt golf cart batteries are $177. And when you return your cores to Manitoba Battery, you'll receive another $17.50 off what's already the lowest price in Manitoba for golf cart batteries. Get them now so you can be ready for May long weekend and summer fun. The sale is on now up until May 6th. Pop by and see him at 1026 Logan Avenue, or for more information, go to manitobabattery.com. And just before we bring Ted in, Canada's favorite Canadian whiskey, Canadian Club, speaking of the Bombers, official spirit of the blue and gold and WST, and will be ready for us at the Rum Hut when we get back to IG Field. But in the meantime, you can pick up Canada's favorite Canadian whiskey at your local Manitoba liquor marts. And don't forget to keep your eyes out for Canadian Club and Ginger Ale pre-mixed cocktails in 473 milliliter cans at liquor marts and beer vendors wherever. If you can't find it, ask for it. They'll have it as well. All right, let's get Ted Wyman here in from the Winnipeg Sun. Lots to talk about on the local scene. Ted, what's up, man? Good to see you on the weekend. How are you?
Well, I'm doing just fantastic, Huss. It was a pretty eventful weekend for Winnipeg sports, I got to tell you. And I mean, with it just sort of bleeding into Blue Bombers training camp starting, it's really no rest for the sports wicked, is there?
No, definitely not. And listen, we've spent a lot of time on this, and we'll be kicking it around with Murat as well. But I mean, you've covered this team for a long time, sports in Winnipeg. I guess I'll ask you, what were your expectations going into the weekend, considering what we heard from Rick Bowness after Game 5? And how did that jive from what you actually got from the players, the coach in round 2, and then the general manager on Sunday?
Wow, that's a good question. I'd have to say my expectation after hearing what Rick Bowness said after the game on Thursday was that it would be pretty explosive. I just thought that, people aren't going to take that very well, but I'm not sure I expected the reaction that we got from them. Really everyone, not really any player came out and said, yeah, Rick was right. We didn't play well. We didn't do the job. They mostly came out and said, we didn't like what Rick had to say. So I was definitely surprised by that. And I think if you contrast it, I did look around at what some of the other teams had to say after losing their last game. And, I pinpoint the New York Rangers. They lost 4-0 in Game 7. They had made it to Game 7 against the Devils. Thought they should have done better, but they didn't really show up in Game 7. And a couple of guys said we were pitiful. And I expected more of that kind of reaction from the Jets. I think people tried to give some players opportunities to say it, and they didn't say it. And I think that's what surprised me the most. It was really just, we didn't like how Rick said it, and not we really felt like we didn't do a good job. And it's kind of unfortunate. Like, we feel bad that our coach feels that way. So that definitely surprised me. I wondered how that would impact Rick Bowness's future with the team, to be honest, because why, if you've got this situation where players feel like they've been thrown under the bus by their coach, are they going to want to come back and play for that coach next year? We know there's a lot of question marks, but some guys are guaranteed to be coming back. And how are they going to feel about it? So again, after that, all that happening, the next thing you know is Kevin Cheveldayoff is reported to be staying, and Rick Bowness is reported to be staying, and we're all just carrying on from there. So I thought there'd be a lot more reaction to it. I thought maybe the organization would take more steps, and really we've seen nothing. So I guess I'm surprised by
Ted,
that.
It's funny in a way that, I mean, I think Bones, with what he had to say after Game 5, almost we've been talking all season long that change is inevitable this year. I mean, based on the contract situations of Scheifele and Hellebuck and Dubois, and when you're left on Blake Wheeler. I would suggest that in addition to that, everything that we heard Thursday night and Saturday from the players, I think would create even a larger need for significant change than was there beforehand. Chevy certainly was not letting on that was the case at all, but he didn't really tell us much, if anything, other than just trying to get through the 42 minutes that he spoke there in that sweatbox that was the downstairs Matt Frost Media Center. But it doesn't change the fact that this team, it will be pushed towards making change, even if management doesn't particularly want it. But I think the need for that was even more glaringly in front of all of our faces when we heard what the majority of the team that did speak had to say.
Well, you can't make the changes that the Jets need to make on the Sunday 3 days after the season. That's just the truth. We know those are further off in the future. I think what a lot of reporters would like, I was not in the room for Chevy. I was there for the players. I did listen to what he had to say. And I think a lot of the reporters were trying to rephrase their questions to get him to give an answer that suggested a vision, a plan for what is going to happen with this team, how it's going to be able to move forward, considering the situation that it's in. And I mean, if you just looked at it as is, with all those 4 players that you talked about coming back next season, let's just assume they're going to still have Connor Hellebuck and Dubois and Wheeler and Scheifele. Even in that case, what would the GM's vision be for going forward? Because it wasn't good enough as it is. And there's nothing that you can point to blame. Yeah, Ehlers didn't play that much in the playoffs. Morrissey got hurt. Scheifele, yes. Those things hurt. It was not easy to play against a team like Vegas without those guys. But we saw that team. They were who we thought they were, to quote a famous line I'm sure you're familiar with, Huss. They absolutely were the team that was good at times, but simply went into lulls. And they had a very long lull that cost them 7 spots in the standings, and then they had a lull at the end of that series against Vegas. They know they didn't play their best, even close to it, and they didn't have a chance. So you want to hear more about what's going to happen, especially when you know that so many things are going to have to change. And right now, I think probably if you're a season ticket holder or just a fan of the Jets, you're probably kind of left in limbo, wondering what the heck this is going to look like in the future, and what you're supposed to be spending your money on when you sign up for more season tickets.
No, it's a good point. And I think the reality of professional sports is the fans are always on a need-to-know basis via the media. And that's the way that this organization has always operated. But here's the thing, Ted. Right now, this fan base sort of does need to know something. If anything, they just need to get a bit of a bone. I think it's incumbent, and this is why I said that is, whatever. We've had pressers like this from Chevy before, but I just thought that in the current state of the Winnipeg Jets, with what they need to do this summer, off the ice, personnel-wise, as well as business-wise, it was a real missed opportunity to, just give a couple nuggets that, the impending change that I think everyone agrees is and has to happen in some way, shape, or form is going to come, that they are on it, and to sort of stay tuned. And in some ways, I think that would excite people, or at least bring some people back and be people dialed in. That just didn't happen. And, I said yesterday, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point, maybe they almost do a redo. I was talking with Mike McIntyre, and he said, well, Chevy spoke 4 times this year. I'm not sure it might be wise, and maybe it's after the first move that happens to talk about, more things that are coming, because let's face it, this next 2 months are going to be crucial and frankly critical to shaping the future of this team going forward, because I think everyone will agree, especially after what we heard on Saturday, the future of this team, at least beyond this season, probably looks very different at a couple of key positions of guys that have been stars and important cogs in this team for a long time.
It's massively important, and that's the thing. And I mean, I think my colleague Scott Billick often has said this, he probably said it on your show, that's where it really becomes a gray area, because how is it that Kevin Cheveldayoff has really earned the trust to go and do this massive situation in the offseason, like to deal with it when he's brought them to this point, and this is the team that you've got. This is what happens. This is a team that didn't really have the intestinal fortitude it needed when it came up against adversity during the regular season and during the playoffs. That's what's been built here, and it's had a chance, and it was up to, close to a Stanley Cup in 2018, but it hasn't been remotely close since. So how do you know that, what makes you have the faith that he's going to be able to do what is so important in this offseason and make this team as good, different, competitive, rebuild? I mean, there's so many possibilities that could come out of this, and the lack of, with no idea what's going to be happening in the future, I think it's very difficult for the fans. And I did want to point out, I think Kelly McCrimmon probably talked more than 4 times in the series with Winnipeg, which is an interesting comparison to Kevin Cheveldayoff, who's so reclusive when it comes to these things. You just don't hear from him very often, and when you do, he really doesn't say anything. So then, again, it's a lot harder for people to get an idea of what the vision might be.
Yeah, no, it is a great point, and I don't think it does them any favors, especially at a crucial point like this for the organization. Ted Wyman's with us from the Winnipeg Sun. But Ted, as much as we'll have plenty of Jet stories to talk about on a daily basis on this program and in the Winnipeg Sun, Bomber training camp just around the corner. And last night was the CFL Draft. And I will admit, I've been far more dialed in recent years to the CFL Draft, maybe leading into sort of 2019, because of how much work the Bombers and Kyle Walters had to do. It's kind of different right now. I mean, this team is so well run. This team is so stacked roster-wise. There's no glaring needs. We didn't go into last night thinking, oh, my God, they really need someone for this particular position. So it allows you to sort of sit back, see what happens, and talk about it afterwards. But really, I mean, do you agree, like the Bombers have been able to go into these last few CFL drafts looking for great athletes, guys they think have a future, not looking at any pressing needs, and consistently draft well in the past? Obviously, the jury's still out on the class of 2023.
It's so funny, Huss, because what you were saying just brought back the memory of how it went with Kyle Walters today. In the interviews before the draft, he said exactly that. We're not looking for any specific position. We're looking for the best talent available. This is the way we operate, and we're in a luxury position, like you said. And then this morning he came out and he said, well, we needed defensive line, receivers, and defensive backs. So that's what we went for. It's like, well, that doesn't really jive with what you were saying. But anyways, regardless, that's what they went for, and that's what they got. They got a lot stronger on the defensive line. There's no doubt about that. And then they did what they always do. They go and get guys that can be good at special teams. They go and get guys that can fill in at positions where they like to have Canadians. Receiver, they got a pretty decent one there in Jeremy Murphy. They got a running back. They got 3 defensive linemen. They got defensive backs. Those are exactly what they like to have. Those are the positions where they have these guys. And, they need to look at filling holes down the road. So knowing that Jake Thomas is in his 12th season on the defensive line, well, you want to make sure that you've got somebody that can play that role there. So they've picked up some interior defensive linemen. And then that first overall, but the first pick, not first overall, 8th pick, is really intriguing. That Anthony Bennett, that guy is going to be
give people the background on this, because it's a very interesting background. I mean, he was drafted out of Regina, but this is a guy that spent a lot of time in the South, has played NCAA football. I mean, give us the CV on the guy the Bombers called out at 8th overall.
Well, I've just been looking it up myself, but he was born in Florida. His father played one game for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, met his mother in Regina. His mother is from Regina. They ended up moving to Florida. He was born down there. He went to Florida Atlantic University, I believe it was, played 3 seasons there. And then for whatever reason, there was a coaching change and he felt he wasn't wanted there anymore. He was not part of the program, and he decided he wanted to go to Regina and go home to his roots. And so he played his last couple of years at Regina. He's 26 years old now. He set a single season Rams record for sacks. He was a all-Canadian player. From what it sounds like, he's a really, really intriguing defensive end. Not a big guy, 6'3", 230, but really agile. And hey, Kyle Walters compared him today to Willie Jefferson. Now, he wasn't necessarily saying he could play like Willie Jefferson, but he said his positivity and his personality and his energy are Willie Jefferson-like. And I asked him about that, and he said, that's 1,000% accurate. He said, that's the guy I want to be like. So if it could work out and they can get it and he can play right away, he's 26. Like I said, he's got a chance to come in, more likely to play right now than he would if it was a few years ago. And he's got that Canadian training, but that Canadian American background training, but Canadian training as well, having played at the University of Regina. He knows the Canadian game. He could come in quickly, and you get him in a rotation with Jackson Jeffcoat and Willie Jefferson, and that's a great spot to have a Canadian. And I think that the hopes are pretty high for him. I heard his name in some draft boards much higher, maybe even as high as 3rd. Bombers got him 8th. That happens every year, but this is a guy they really liked, and I think we'll see him probably. I think he's going to have a really good chance to make the roster this year. Yeah,
he had a monster season last year and was the Defensive Player of the Year. The Gators' Brian Morley, Defensive Player of the Year last year. Or I should say that was Jake Kelly, who I was just about to ask you for.
Oh, yes.
But this it's a real intriguing pick. And back to the fact that he's 26 years old, sometimes, you make a pick of a guy that will be ready in a year or two. Now is the time for this Anthony Bennett. I mean, unlike a lot of the other picks, they expect him to come in, earn a spot at camp, and be a guy that we'll see on the field this year for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
Yeah, definitely not a futures pick. Neither is Carl Schmitz, the punter they picked up in the global draft, who's 36. So
that's got to be the oldest player ever drafted, right?
Well, the global draft's a bit of a different thing. If it were the regular draft, then yes. But I don't think he would have been eligible in the regular draft. But, the global draft's interesting because, I kind of asked Kyle about it today. Why don't you just sign a guy like that, if you're interested in him? But apparently if they're not born in the United States or Canada, they have to go through the global draft. So because he was born in Bermuda, they had to use a pick on him. And, they've got lots of globals, so I don't think they're too worried about that. But when it comes to some of the, I think Anthony Bennett especially is going to be the kind of guy that should come in pretty quickly. And he really seems confident. He seems like a guy that's going to fit in very well with the Blue Bombers. He's got that vivacious personality like Willie Jefferson does. And he's a really good athlete. And even if he can't get into a rotation on the defensive line, he was apparently one of the best special teams players at both Regina and at Florida Atlantic. And if he's a good special teamer, the Bombers will find a spot for him. That's how it works here.
And just the second round, we don't go through all the picks, but Jake Kelly, who the Bombers took at 15th overall in the second round, a DB, tested very well, was the 3rd fastest guy at the combine. I would imagine not only did they like the player, but the fact that Tyrell Ford signed that futures deal with the Green Bay Packers allows him to come in a spot on the roster that there will be some opportunity for some depth.
Oh, absolutely. And the Bombers, this is the second year in a row where they got a really good athletic player, Canadian, that they kind of think they see a future for him playing. Usually these DBs who get drafted, they're mostly special teams guys with some opportunity to maybe work their way into the safety conversation. But one thing I know Richie Hull doesn't mind is using Canadians at the dime back position now. And you've also got, the safety in there. Right now, the Bombers have Brandon Alexander. I don't think he's going anywhere. He's the big leader of the secondary back there at safety, but he's had some health problems too, so you never know for sure. They still have Nick Hallett, Noah Hallett. I think Noah Hallett's going to be injured most of the year. That doesn't look too great for him, but he's on the mend. Reda Kramdi actually played some dime back one, started a game for them. So they're not terrible in that area. And Terrell Ford could be back. I mean, the fact is he's a futures deal and he's going to get a shot with the Green Bay Packers, but he may be back in Winnipeg and he would have to come here if he returns because of the CFL NFL window. So probably another area where the Bombers in great shape. And the fact is that's really what's made this so good for them over the years here, is that they've just established really strong foundations at each position, and then they've built upon it through the draft. And I think it's a real, if you want to just go back and look through the drafts over the years, that since Kyle Walters has been in charge of the Blue Bombers and Ted Gavea, those guys do an incredibly good job. The Bombers always have really good Canadians, and that's where these guys come from. So, I think you have to give kudos for them for that work that they've done, because the Bombers really excel in that area.
And Ted, one more. I mean, you mentioned the multiple special teamers, kickers, punters that were selected in the global draft, and the other signing today. I think if there's one thing we can take from Kyle Walters' offseason moves so far, Mark Leggio is going to be challenged for that kicking position once we get to training camp. Just thoughts on that, because if there's one thing that we've heard over and over in the chat from the Bombers, from Bomber fans at Winnipeg Sports Talk, and I'm sure you and your conversations through Sun outlets, the confidence level in Mark Leggio, despite the fact that he had a pretty good regular season, the way the Grey Cup ended, and maybe it's just that Justin Medlock set the bar so damn high, but I think it's pretty clear the Bombers think that they wouldn't mind taking a look at some other guys and, having some real legitimate competition for that job.
Yeah, I don't think Mark Leggio is going to be challenged. I think Mark Leggio has the challenge, because right now, he's the incumbent, but, they have to be taking a hard look elsewhere. And the problem for Mark Leggio is exactly what you said, that he did kick pretty well during the regular season. But the Bombers went 16-4 last season, including the playoffs. The 2 of the 4 losses were pretty much directly off the foot of Mark Leggio. He was unable to make the kick against Montreal that would have given them the win, and he was unable to get the ball. I think he was unable to get the ball enough in the air to have an opportunity to kick the winning field goal against Toronto in the Grey Cup. But unfortunately for him, he's had his chances in big moments, and it's not good enough. And I'll tell you right now, 2 years ago, Mike O'Shea said, we're not bringing any kickers to camp except for Mark Leggio. And then at some point in the season, they got Tyler Caprina, and they brought in Ali Murtada because Leggio just wasn't getting it done. Last year, they had a couple.
And then they traded for Sergio Castillo in the same season.
Traded for Sergio Castillo, exactly. So then last year, he got another chance at it. He didn't. There was a bit of competition, but it wasn't much. This year, they're bringing in 3 kickers, all are kicker punters, and I think 4 other punters. I mean, you're telling me that he has he doesn't. I don't think he's the favorite to be the Bombers kicker at the end of this, unless everybody's terrible. I mean, honestly, it's going to be because he can be a really good kicker in training camp. But when it comes to those big moments, if you're not there, if you can't get it done, it's just not good enough. So, I mean, I like Mark Leggio. I think he's given a lot of great effort for the Bombers, but he's going to be tough to have a chance to make this team again.
Yeah, the gauntlet is being thrown down. Well, of course, we've got the Fish starting their training camp today. Bomber rookies getting here next week. Just finishing up a very busy time for all the boys in the Sun Sports section. Right back at it as well. Fill people in on what you in particular have coming up as we get ready for the blue and gold to get back and start the Unfinished Business Tour.
Well, tomorrow we got a full feature on Anthony Bennett. I told you a fair bit of it already, but go read it because there's a lot more detail in there. And I'll have, a rundown of all the Bombers players that they drafted and some of thoughts on that kicking competition and a few other notes from there. And then, of course, next week, right into rookie camp on May 10th. We'll have our full coverage and really, trying to do some new things these days with our online coverage. And I think you'll see some differences in our coverage of the Bombers this year, but I think it'll only be to the fans' benefit.
Great stuff, Teddy. Thanks for doing this. As always, great to see you on the weekend, and looking forward to catching up soon as it gets nice outside and we get the football team and the baseball team back on the fields here in the Peg.
Time for burgers and beers tonight, I think there, my friend. Have a good one.
Book it, Teddy. All right, there's Ted Wyman of the Winnipeg Sun. And make sure to see his work, Scott Billick, Paul Friesen, and the entire Sun team over at the Winnipeg Sun. All right, Murat is going to join us in just a minute. I did want to quickly thank our friends at Wallace & Wallace and the Dream Factory, and of course Josh Morrissey for our Unsung Hero program throughout the winter. And I believe we'll be doing it as well next year. But we have our final winner for the Unsung Hero, and this is just a great one, and it speaks to so many people that do so much in our community that, super volunteers, if you will. And the nomination comes from Abby Bayon, who's the GM over at the Corden Community Center. And the email said this: thanks so much for doing this program. There's so many people who do so many amazing things in our community without any recognition. It is wonderful to be able to celebrate them. Keep doing great things. I'd like to nominate Dana Ray as an unsung hero. She's the epitome of a volunteer, always willing to help out with anything anyone might need to get people involved. A mom of 4 kids, as well as a partner at a local accounting firm, which you can imagine keeps her very busy. However, it never stops Dana out from being able to help out. She's the community center treasurer, softball convener, coach, rally cap baseball convener, manager of her kids' hockey teams, and all-around volunteer. Her passion for the community is contagious, always getting people involved and looking to start new programs to help get people involved. She started the Corden Community Center softball program from nothing to now hosting 4 teams: passionate, reliable, patient, compassionate, creative, energetic, positive, organized, and always willing to help. Her commitment to the community is like no other. We're proud to have her as a member of the Corden community. Please accept this nomination for amazing volunteer Dana Ray, and a great picture of her with one of the Comets teams. Dana, congratulations. Abby, thank you very much for the nomination. Dana's going to get the final Josh Morrissey autographed jersey from our program with Wallace & Wallace. And a little tease for you folks: Josh Morrissey is going to join us on Friday's Winnipeg Sports Talk. We'll also have a couple of the folks from the Dream Factory pop on a little later on in the interview to sort of wrap the program. But of course, Josh, the ambassador of the Dream Factory, and Josh and his wife, Margot, were matching the donations to the Dream Factory in the names of the nominees. So great way to get into the off season, and very much looking forward to having Josh on the show. And a huge thanks again to Wallace & Wallace for making this entire program happen. All right, before we get to Murat, I got to thank our friends at Vita Health. Hey, May is here, folks. And if you're looking for great prices on natural and organic supplements, beauty products, groceries, and the best selection of local products, you got to head down to Vita Health. And now with the warm weather here, it's barbecue season. Get down to Vita Health and pick up some delicious Vita Market grass-fed bison and beef steaks. And the perfect thing to help you digest that red meat, Health First Prime Zyme digestive enzymes. Symptoms like heartburn, gas, bloating, and abdominal pain after meals may be signs you're not digesting food well. Health First Prime Zyme can supplement enzyme levels to help break down proteins, carbohydrates, fats, lactose, and reduce digestive discomfort. That way you can enjoy the delicious food you're cooking. Remember, if you can't make it down to any of the Vita Health stores, you can visit their website to buy online with local delivery. Vita Health Fresh Market, empowering people to lead healthy lives, 7 Winnipeg locations, and online at myvita.ca. How's the closet looking as we get into spring, fellas? If your wardrobe and menswear needs an upgrade, head on down to F Apparel. Heading into spring and summer, custom suits beginning at $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an incredible selection of menswear accessories. 15% discount for wedding parties if you are in a wedding party for the upcoming year. And they've also got a great offer for 2023 high school grads. Get a new suit and with a free custom shirt and tie valued at $150. Find out more at 190 Smith Street downtown, or make an appointment, or find out more at EPHapparel.com. And just before we bring in Murat, we're cracking 20 degrees today. It's blizzard weather. The new summer blizzard flavors are here at your local Nick and Nicky DQ. Plan to take the fam down there and put smiles on everyone's faces. Nick and Nicky DQ, supporters of ours since day one, with 4 locations: DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, DQ St. Anne's, and the DQ out in Niverville. All right, we are head first into the Winnipeg Jets offseason, and what a way it got going. Between the final buzzer of Game 5 through the weekend, Murat was there for all of it and joins us now from The Athletic. Murat, what's going on? How are you?
Hey, I'm enjoying the sunshine, the sunny, sandy beaches of Winnipeg out there today. It's good. Glad to see you. How are you?
I'm good. I mean, I, like many people, would prefer to be focusing on the Jets playing games right now. But for those of us that write or talk about the hockey club, no shortage of angles coming out of the last few days. I mean, let's take it back to Game 5. You were there in the room for the most explosive and most brief press conference from a head coach, I believe, in Jets history. Take us back to the room, Murat. I'd love to get your perspective and reenactment of what it was like being in the room, what you heard from Rick Bowness, and what the reaction of those of you that were in the room had after he left.
A reenactment would be something. You don't want my acting chops up here. But I think when you know the stakes, right? Winnipeg has just been eliminated from the playoffs. You've just come from the room. You've talked to the players who are devastated. You know, Nick Ehlers is talking about how he feels like shit and all that stuff. You enter the room for that coach's availability, and you're at your probably the most heightened awareness or sensitivity, or you know that somebody's going to come in the form of Rick Bowness, and his emotions are going to be strong. And you don't know if they're going to be sad. You don't know if they're going to be angry. You don't know if he's going to light a fire under his team and say that it goes back to January and February. So the moment that he walks in, there's a sense of this hushed tension in the room, to be sure. You're watching him. You're looking for cues as to his emotional, state. And he walks up onto that podium before anybody has a microphone. I'm gesturing for a microphone as well. He says, okay, this is going to be short and sweet. And you can just tell there's going to be something intense here. So, Jeff Hamilton throws hey, what's your overall impressions? And he goes off. And I think, Huss, my impression of that was Bowness was angry. He was emotional. He wanted so much more for his team. He probably connected emotionally to the last time he felt so disappointed, which was probably that January, February, early March slide. And if there's anything that I think I've come to learn about Rick Bowness over the last year, it's that emotions drive him. He's not, about the analytics. He's not going to stress about X's and O's more than he feels like he needs to. He cares about how much his players care. He cares so much. You can see his emphasis on the bench. And if somebody isn't going to live up to the emotional intensity that he brings himself, in his suit, not in hockey gear behind the bench, I think that's going to really grind Rick Bowness's gears. And I think that he was, I don't want to say devastated. He said disgusted. Let's use that. I think he was disgusted by the fact that there were so many players who didn't appear to be matching that effort level. And if there's one thing that you're going to do that could possibly piss Bowness off that much, it's look like you're not trying as much as he would be trying if he were in your shoes.
It is a great point. And if there's one thing, and Rick talked about it, he has a ton of passion for the game. He loves it. He loves the competition. And that is what drives him. And I couldn't help, Murat, but think about, man, this would be like game 11 or 12 of the season. I mean, after he had missed, I guess, 9 of the first 10 out after he unfortunately got COVID right off the hop. And he made a comment one time, and I think this might have actually been after one of the Jets' wins, but just on how quiet the bench was. And he used that word, passion, about trying to get more out of that, or frankly was a little surprised there wasn't more of that in his group. And for me, that was my takeaway. I mean, it was an indictment of a team that didn't play with a lot of many things in game number 5, when you would think that it would have been ramped up the most, considering their season was over if they didn't win that hockey game. But it really was questioning the passion, we can call it engagement. I mean, there's a number of synonyms that are sort of different but kind of the same, of what was missing at that point early on that sort of surprised him, that certainly wasn't there when they didn't have the pushback when the season was going in the wrong direction. And unfortunately, it was, and I think this is what set him off the way that he did, that game 5 lack of performance and lack of pushback was almost the final nail in the coffin of something that had been smoldering, especially during the second half of the season, when he was looking for answers as to why this team wasn't stepping up, considering what was happening to their spot in the standings and what's happened to their play.
If in his heart of hearts, deep in his guts, he looked at game 5 and could honestly, truthfully feel, this is the first time I've ever seen this lack of pushback, then you would understand confusion. He would have come out and said, I have no idea what happened. This is shocking to me. This is, but I think, like you say, Rick Bowness felt that way a few times over the course of the season. And you can point to various times, if these guys think they're giving everything they have, they're dreaming, he said in San Jose towards the end of the season. There's what you just referenced. There's when they came back, they played a really good game against St. Louis, and they were still talking, this is after his return from COVID in the fall, about how they need to get to so much higher of a level. And you can find it throughout the season where if there's something missing, and of course, if you're an emotional guy, you probably frame a lot of the problems in terms of emotions, but he was clearly, surprised. He was clearly put off to some degree by the fact that there was that seeming lack of pushback, is a word we've heard so much of, for so much of the season. And I wonder, I'm a big believer in habits. I'm a big believer that when shit hits the fan and life is particularly tough and people are exhausted, they go back to habits as opposed to what, new creative ideas, what they've been taught recently, open-minded approaches to problem solving. I think they just fall back on what they've come to do by default. And that's in all walks of life, including myself. I think when stuff got hard for the Winnipeg Jets this season, some of the shell shock from previous years crept in. And if that was a lack of emotion at certain times, or, okay, I've got to, take this shift 1-on-3 at other times, the overpassing, the long shifts, the slow line changes, the puck's going in the offensive zone, I'm going to extend the shift a little bit just in case. There's a lot of those that I think take, it's like death by 1,000 paper cuts in a way, where Winnipeg is a quality team that did improve this season, that did play better overall this season. But a lot of times when things got hard, you saw those little bad habits just erode, take a few cups of water into that canoe at a time until it was kind of overflowing, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I think Bowness, coming from outside the organization, even knowing what he was getting into, was surprised at times by how bad some of that was.
Yeah, and you know what I mean? Adding fuel to the fire in game 5. And listen, Bones wasn't around in 2019. I mean, I still go back to game 6, which if you look back at the box score and the score, doesn't look as bad as, that series ended after game 5. And maybe, the fourth game against Montreal, I think the shots were 42-16 or something like that. They somehow scored 2 goals from Logan Stanley and got it to OT, but didn't win. But, this was very similar to that. But I guess what I'm saying is I think that Rick Bowness has been around long enough that he can handle losing. He can understand things not going your way, and especially considering, the predicament the team was in with losing Josh Morrissey in game 3 and losing Mark Scheifele in game 4. But it was the total lack of emotion, pushback, to use his term, and real fight in the team that I think was was the thing that was most personally offensive to Rick, and that's sort of set it off. And then, of course, we heard from the players. And I mean, there was a hell of a lot more pushback on Saturday at Canada Life Center than there was Thursday at T-Mobile Arena. What do you think this does? I mean, listen, we don't need to get too much into Chevy because he didn't really tell us anything. But we all knew that there were crucial decisions that were going to be forced on this team because of the contractual situation. But regardless of the contracts, just the identity of the team, the culture of the team, what do you think the Bones explosion and then what we heard from the players, which was basically pushing back at the coach and not a lot of, well, I mean, as I said, it would have been so different if people said, listen, I didn't like what Rick had to say. That was a little bit over the top. But at the same time, I understand why he was so volcanic because, you know, we weren't there and we needed to be way better. And that just didn't really seem to happen. I do wonder what the aftermath of this is with the coach who is apparently coming back and a lot of players who, even with changes, will still be Jets next season.
You know what? One more on the coach from me on that regard. Like, one of the things that I think about when it comes to anyone, to you, to me, to media, to the coaches and players of the Winnipeg Jets, is I'm fascinated by their why. Why do you do the thing you do? Like, why do I write about hockey with such, with the passion that I do? Or what role does this media person like being around the guys? Do we want to break news? What is it, right, that keeps you going and connected and passionate about the thing that you do? And if you think about Rick Bowness, like 68 years old, I think it is, 69 maybe he turned this season, I'm not sure. Everybody thought he was going to retire. Why could he possibly want to get behind a bench right now? It's love of the game. It's passion. It's probably hoping to win. He had a Stanley Cup at some point over the course of his career. And I know that a lot of people around the NHL are pulling for him. If you're going to put yourself through any of that, and your why is about passion and love of the game, and you don't see that passion, of course you're going to blow up about it. Of course that when you see an absence of that in other people, it's going to irk you. So again, I think I have all kinds of empathy for that particular blow up. When it comes to the players, I also have empathy for the message that they all seem to go back to. I wish that he would have told us directly. And I know that a lot of people's hot take response to that is, I mean, didn't he? And we've seen it in the media. We know he's been hard and critical on his players throughout various courses of the year. They've even told us since then that in the second intermission, he went in there and he laid out quite an intense, disappointment in the way that game was going. So it's not that it should have been that much of a shock, but I think that the players, upon hearing his words, entering those exit media availabilities, to a man, they all know that they're going to be asked about it. So they have to prepare a thought, a line, a sentence. They have to say something about it. And the easiest thing for them to do is to say, well, I wish you would have kept it between us. I think fans wanted them to say, hey, he was right. We should have been better. But then you get into a little bit of pushback in terms of like war of the words. I saw a lot of takes after Bowness's words that were like, hey, how could he possibly come back? Are they going to fire him? Are they going to let him go? I mean, the amount of conflict here is untenable. I don't have even a little bit of time for that. Not even a little bit. I think that these people are adults working in an industry whose very definition is a competition. There's going to be passion. There's going to be conflict. If there isn't, that's a problem, especially given the first round exit and recent history in Winnipeg. If they can't hear, I'm disgusted, and then privately behind closed doors have conversations about that. Why were you disgusted? Why didn't you tell us about that? Okay, here's what I did say about that. Here's what we were trying to work on. If you can't go through that kind of conflict as an adult human being in an industry devoted to competition, you might not be cut out for it. And I have faith in the adulthood of the Winnipeg Jets in a world that maybe shies away from conflict, or a generation that is struggling with conflict in the ways because of how social and how things blow up all of the time. I think it's a natural, important, vital thing, and an important way for teams and cultures and communities to get better. So I don't think that Bowness going off on his players is a fireable offense. I don't think them kind of being hesitant to criticize themselves means that they were throwing him under the bus. I think this is a situation which is an honest reflection of the state of the Winnipeg Jets right now, and it's on them to deal with it like grown-ups.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think if anything, because let's face it, a lot of these guys are going to be back. I mean, we'll get into some big potential changes at key positional spots. And frankly, in the leadership group that's been here for a long time, whether they had letters on their jerseys this year or not. But with Bones being the head coach and this season ending the way that it did, if anything, that is going to be the ultimate reminder that there is a standard that Rick Bowness has tried to establish and maintain. And if you cannot get behind that, to use your quote, I mean, maybe you're not cut out for it, or maybe this team isn't the right spot for you, because that's what the teams that are still playing have. I mean, there will be guys, I'm sure, in the National Hockey League that are playing that are just sort of happy to be there. This team has too much talent to just be happy to be there, to just be happy to make the playoffs. And I'm not suggesting that all of the players are for a minute, but it did sort of come out like that from some players as they sort of celebrated what they were able to do and completely glossed over a no-show with their backs against the wall and their season on the line. And, you know, regardless of what happens in the media going forward and what guys say going into training camp, I mean, that standard and that expectation, without being coddled, without being protected, as previous head coaches have done here in Winnipeg for a long, long time, and I think that's a big part of how we got here, I think it was important to happen. And regardless of how it was handled by everyone, I think with some time to consider it going forward, that hopefully will be the lasting legacy of what's happened over the last couple of days.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. Rick Bowness was brought in conceivably for his bluntness, his honesty, his veteran status to lead a cultural change. And even if the players who seem hesitant to say we weren't good enough, even if they are deeply discontent, a lot of these guys have been together and gone through it and seen some of Winnipeg's successes and, you know, real disappointments over the last several years. There may be a fatigue that comes with that too. You know, it may be that, you know, if people find better results elsewhere, it might be better for both parties in some situations. And, you know, you could use Blake Wheeler as an example of that, where even last summer they explored options for him to play elsewhere. And he was, you know, on board with at least exploring that at the time, he said. So I guess what I'm saying is that it's possible for change to be absolutely necessary without there being villains in the piece, or without it being some kind of moral failure. Maybe it's just time that some of these entrenched, you know, relationships, historical conflicts, disappointments, successes, all of that, like we're entering a period of time in Jets history where we don't know the plot, whether it's a rebuild, whether it's a competitive team, and some fresh starts and fresh voices are probably extremely important. I think of, you know, Brendan Dillon, Nate Schmidt's involvement in the team over the last couple of years, Nino Niederreiter just telling like it is from the moment that he arrives. Some of the freshest opinions, I think, have come from players who haven't been here for the last, you know, 5, 6, 7 years or more. Mason Appleton has been around for a lot, but he was maybe the one guy that said, you know what, it would be a loser's mentality to accept this and not want to get better. So I think that the Jets are at a position where it's clear that this generation or this group or this era has given what it can give. And there are ways to move on from that while still honoring it and still being proud of the good things that happened and, you know, being honest within the organization about the bad things that have happened as well. It's going to be a time of change, or it should be, because Bowness's transformation of that culture can't happen in 1 year or in a couple of months if all of the pieces are the same all of the way through.
Exactly. And you know, we saw this year that despite the best intentions and the hard work of a new coaching staff, which did a great job in a lot of areas, there's some old habits that die hard, and that is not unique to the Winnipeg Jets. That's not unique to professional hockey. That is kind of life. And you need to work so hard to instill new ways of doing things. And listen, there hasn't been a lot of accountability around here for a long time. That was the key word. I think they got some of it at times, but unfortunately it really was absent at the most important time of the year. And it's a big reason why everything that happened over the course of the last few days. Now, one quote I do want to ask you about in particular, because to me he's the most important player involved in any potential changes and what he means to the team. But also when Connor Hellebuyck spoke, and again at times, and he was asked about his legacy. So I mean, I guess, when you're asked a question like that, sometimes you can sort of look back and speak maybe in the past tense. But Hellebuyck talked about the group and about how, much they like playing with each other and how talented the players are. But the one thing that said, and we've said this before, I mean, maybe it just didn't work. Maybe it just didn't all fit together. And first of all, I thought that he was correct. I mean, I think that every one of these players has legitimate things to bring to NHL teams, and in different situations, in different organizations, different cultures, maybe they would work out differently. But Hellebuyck spoke to that, and I thought that was very true. At the same time, Murat, I couldn't help, and I think you all know I'm a huge Helly backer. I think he's a franchise player, and if you can't pay and keep your franchise player, what are you doing? But I'll be honest, I mean, my confidence level of him being back or him being committed to the future was not there. But at the same time, as we've seen many times before, I thought he, in a very unique way, kind of said in a lot of ways what I think the reality is with this group, or at least this core overall.
Yeah, Connor Hellebuyck. I mean, what an interesting speaker, to be sure. And sitting there in the room, yes, it's an important piece of context. Whenever fans are hearing quotes, I think an important follow-up question in the back of your mind should be, well, what question were they asked that led to that quote? And so, I'm not sure if that Hellebuyck response was in response to what I asked, but at one point I asked, when you signed your contract extension in 2018 compared to now in this situation, how do you reflect on what your hopes were then and what you've seen since that time? If you get a question like that, you have a green light to be reflective. And he joked, oh yeah, that's a deep one, before he answered his question. And if you didn't know that context, you might think he just brought up the idea of being reflective or thinking about his legacy. So all of that is important. And all of that to say, sitting there in that room, I didn't get a tremendous sense that he saw himself as a forever Jet either. I think he's been telling us who he is for years now. He wants a Stanley Cup or bust. That's his goal. That's his one remaining thing. If he believes that Winnipeg is a contender, Winnipeg's a contender for his services as well. If he doesn't believe that Winnipeg is a contender, I think that, then that contract ask gets so big it becomes, untenable, and, you might have to explore a trade of the player, to be honest. In terms of what he said about the group, I think that, I think some fans have taken a hold of this narrative that, there's tremendous conflict within the room. And we saw them sort of air out their dirty laundry last year, especially with Paul Stastny's comments. And we saw them struggle down the stretch again this year. So they must be at odds with each other all of the time. This year, I don't believe that that's the case. And I'm not behind the closed doors, but the things that I hear that come out of, this player said this or did that or what have you, seems to be that they came together and believed in each other as people this year in a way that probably didn't feel that way prior to this season, or at least at the end of last season. So good. That's important. Good for them. And I think that some of the leadership changes contributed. I think some of the players felt more confident in speaking up. You heard Nikolai Ehlers say at the end of the year that, coming back to a group that believed in itself so much, or that was such a good group of guys, was an important driver for him. And I believe him when he says that. At the same time, that only gets you so far, and it doesn't change the reality of what these contracts are and what the 2024 ticking clock is on those guys. So you gotta know who to keep and who to move on from. I think that's Cheveldayoff's toughest situation right now.
Well, I mean, a lot of people have said this is a 2-year window. I said all year, this is a 1-year window. And guess what? That year is up, and it is time to see how they play this out. And listen, if this team was still playing right now and, won the West and, if this team was truly right there at the pinnacle, maybe you could justify, running it back, if you will. But I think it's quite clear that this team in their current incarnation isn't that. And this is the Winnipeg Jets. This isn't the Boston Bruins. This isn't the LA Kings. there's the potential. I mean, anytime when you have players get to free agency and you're competing with the rest of the league, you're in a major disadvantage. And that is why I really do think that this team absolutely must maximize whatever value is remaining on the players that they don't believe are going to be here at the end of this season. And that comes up with a few things. If we want to put Hellebuyck in, I think he's definitely in that conversation right now, even if I maybe didn't want to admit it earlier. He is there. And then you've got your top two centers. I guess everyone, what's everyone's definition of a rebuild, a retool? I mean, there's too much talent on this team, in my opinion, regardless of the moves, to expect that this team would be a bottom feeder. And in fact, I think there might be some addition by subtraction in a lot of ways with some of the players outside of Hellebuyck that might leave. But from my perspective, Murat, it's the goalie, it's your top two centers, and the long overdue figuring out how you're going to accommodate some of the younger talent in the organization on the blue line that is ready to go, and you have to figure out and how that works. Is that sort of the way you see the big things on Kevin Cheveldayoff's to-do list, even if he didn't even want to give us a nibble on what his list looks like on Sunday?
Huss, you hacked my WordPress. You're in there. I have a draft of Kevin Cheveldayoff's offseason decisions that's going up tomorrow morning, and it touches on all of that stuff. Probably in the order that you laid it out as well.
I didn't hack the cloud. We're just on the same wavelength.
Remo, where are you? What did you do? How did you? But it's clear, like these are the clear priorities of the organization, or clear, decisions that they need to make, and how successful they are dictates the next couple of years here in Winnipeg. And for me, I think they're so interdependent on each other. It's hard to say which one is the number one priority. Connor Hellebuyck is going to want to see what the team looks like, I'm going to say on July 1 when he can begin to sign the extension, but throughout the summer and into the, maybe into September or longer as well, before he knows what he thinks of Winnipeg as a winning organization. So that's going to play a role. Mark Scheifele, probably similar. Blake Wheeler, I think probably they're moving on, but, we'll see about that as well. Mark Scheifele plays a role. So I guess I start to look at it almost chronologically. I think that Pierre-Luc Dubois comes front of mind for me. By now, Winnipeg should have a sense from him. I know he likes to live in the moment, and so he wasn't looking ahead during his exit interviews. He's all of that sort of stuff. It's a big decision, et cetera, et cetera. But the draft is going to be Winnipeg's first and possibly biggest and best window to move him if they need to. So if they're unable to come to a long-term extension by that point, you're going to get, you should hope Winnipeg could get, a promising trade return from a player like that in and around the draft. And I think that's important because it's before July free agency. It impacts, Vladislav Nemesnikov, perhaps. It impacts those UFA 2024 players in Winnipeg who might be considering extensions or not. It begins to set the tone. And there's a big difference between, you got the 17th overall pick and the prospect versus, a 23-year-old player who has hopes of being a second line center and helping a team win, this year's version of Kirby Dach, let's say. And I think that's the tone setter. If Winnipeg can come out of that, and if they're forced to make that trade, which I expect that they will be, if they can come out of that with positive assets, you may be able to begin to talk to Hellebuyck about, okay, maybe it's not 8 years, but there's a shorter term window that you can believe in. If you can't sell Hellebuyck on it, you've got to move on from him. There are contenders who need goaltending. And then again, I look at the chronology. I tend to think of teams as a little bit more optimistic about their goaltending situations in the offseason, a little more desperate at the trade deadline, which adds a wrinkle of complication to it. There's a trend in the NHL to move to tandems, 1A, 1B guys, and spend as much between the two of them as teams are likely to spend on Hellebuyck on an extension. Those are your two biggest. I think Scheifele's waiting in the weeds as well and could be a fallback plan for the Jets if they're desperate to have some semblance of competitiveness. But I think Dubois and Hellebuyck are your keystones based on their age and performance levels.
Now, and again, I'm sure the next time we chat, barring anything happening in the meantime, and maybe over the course of this month, we can really focus in on potential landing spots, some teams, and I know you'll be covering that in The Athletic on, what these deals might look like. But when it comes to those players, I mean, whether it be the centers, Dubois and Scheifele, or Hellebuck, what sort of a return? I mean, if you put your GM hat on, a Winnipeg Jets GM hat on for a minute, which is important to note because, again, the job is different here than it is in a lot of other places. Considering where the team is at, have you thought at all about what the ask or what the expectations coming back are? Because, I mean, the way I think about this, and again, I don't know whether people want to call this a rebuild, a retool, or invent some other name for it. But I mean, I think a lot of the same players, the very talented players, are going to be here. But when you change over your potential top two centers, I mean, you're going to need to have a center coming back, at least one. I mean, to me, those players are ones that are at a different stage in their career. Maybe guys coming out of ELCs. And there is a bit of a gamble on that. I mean, players that aren't yet established where they are, but if you believe in them and can help turn them into the players that they have potential of being, you're now resetting the clock on that position in your roster for a long time. That's sort of where I believe at least the priority needs to be on the centers. I'm very, very up in the air on what an ask would be when it comes to a Connor Hellebuck. And I don't know how much they value picks, for instance, in this draft right now. I'm not even sure the picks in the future are that attractive because by the time those guys are here, Kyle Connor's gone, Nikolai Ehlers are gone, or at least they need to be re-signed beyond their present contracts.
Yeah, big questions to be sure. And I think that if you're trading a centers, let's say in this world, you just pluck Scheifele and Dubois from the roster. And what do you have left, right? You have Nikolai Ehlers, just a tremendous, skilled, speedy forward. Kyle Connor, the same with more offense and maybe less transitional success. Cole Perfetti as well. Well, they all have a theme. There's not a lot of size and brawn there. There is a lot of talent there, that's to be sure. So you're probably looking at, you're probably not bad enough to tank, to use the fans' words.
Oh, exactly. Like,
Just
I don't
like
think there's this team. I don't know that there's a way this team could be, especially in the division they're in with some of the competition, could be a team that's going to be talking about the lottery in the top 5. What you don't want to be is like the 12th worst team in the league where you're not making the playoffs. It's a disappointing season and you're still not picking around. I mean, I think no matter what happens with these players, the potential of this team being a playoff team will certainly be there if they've got someone that can, if Hellebuck's gone, give even close to a level of goaltending that gives you a chance to win every night. But I mean, to me, obviously we get to the blue line, but I mean, who is in those center positions and what that can do for those other players that, especially Ehlers. I think Ehlers is completely capable. We've seen that at times of him sort of driving a line with different sort of players, not necessarily, what did Mike Scheifele call them, the magical players he's playing with? I mean, there can be a different type. And Kyle Connor, listen, he's an incredible player. There's a great trigger man, does a lot of those things. Might need one of those type of players even more, to at least get to where he's been, which has been one of the top scorers in the league as of the last few years.
Yeah, they need, I guess, play drivers or some form of chemistry in that regard. Nemesnikov seemed to be a perfect fit for Ehlers, and that's one that you hope that the Jets would be able to make happen at a bargain. 2.5 mil is what he made last season, and he's bounced around so much. I mean, the chemistry looked good. Let's be real. In terms of those center trade returns, Cheveldayoff, to his absolute credit, has done so well when painted into a corner before, right? I mean, Pierre-Luc Dubois was a problem for a problem in terms of its trade. Roslovic wasn't happy in Winnipeg. Laine wasn't happy in Winnipeg. But it's a problem he gets to have because he negotiated that situation reasonably well. I mean, Dubois is a quality 24, turning 25-year-old center. And I think Winnipeg's priority is going to be players under term with contract under contract with term who they can project into the future a little bit, which makes a player on their second contract extremely, desirable. And there's a gamble with that because you're not getting a finished product necessarily. If you're going for a player who's 23 years old on their second contract, you're just coming off their ELC where you can, say that you have a few years of team control left. They're not going to be a finished product even to the extent that Dubois is. And I think that he's still developing his game as well. So you have to win that trade. You have to hit in that way. And again, I think of Kirby Dach and the way that Montreal was able to gamble on him coming out of Chicago, and Chicago making him available and all of that sort of situation. That's a dream scenario, I think, in terms of a Dubois trade return, because he helps you a little right away, no matter what. And you can project him to grow into the role that you hoped Dubois would play. I look at the Timo Meier trade return for San Jose. I think Timo Meier is a tremendously good comparable for Dubois trade return. And really it was a first-round pick, a second-round pick that can become a first-round pick, and 2 kind of B+ prospects as well, amongst other things. You know, that's a possibility, but that doesn't help you here and now either. And I think that it's going to be a direction-defining trade. I don't expect Winnipeg to get a bunch of first-round picks and then flip them for a player that's more aggressive and ambitious than you typically see for Winnipeg. So I really think it comes down to that player who's, and I don't know that player's name, who's 23 years old, either about to sign their second contract or has their second contract with a few years on it, and who you think can grow into that sort of 2C or even better if you hit really luckily that role. And if you can get a list of those players, I think that's your dream scenario for the Jets on this one.
Well, and you know who? One guy that sort of stands out to me is Quentin Byfield in LA. And this was a guy, he was second overall pick. He still has not really popped in the National Hockey League. He played 40 games last year. He played 53 games this year. You know, did play pretty well in the playoffs, had a goal and 3 assists and 4 points. But, you know, and whether that would be involving a Scheifele, probably more likely a Hellebuck, because that is the one team that is mentioned. And I believe Corpy is an expiring contract. So that's something where they would look for that. So, I mean, maybe it's the Hellebuck trade that gets you that center that can come in. And, you know, again, when you pick a player second overall, you have high expectations for him. But that's sort of a player, if they were willing to be traded, you know, you're hoping that you're getting much more than what they've shown so far in the National Hockey League, but you're giving up an established, finished product that is one of the best in the league at their position. And I think a team like the LA Kings would have the utmost confidence that they'd be able to sign a player to keep them around, because as we all know, that's probably a pretty nice place to spend their winters, as long as they can convince this player that they are going to be a contender to play against the best and be playing in the playoffs each and every year.
You know, I've been known to spend a few weeks every now and again in Los Angeles as well. And I got to say, it wins a guy over, you know. The Sunshine has a way of doing that. But I think LA is a great example of the type of team you're looking for Hellebuck, because especially them, where Los Angeles essentially became a wagon the moment Korpisalo delivered stable goaltending for them. And I know that they went down to Edmonton, who is another team to talk about, actually, although their cap situation is a bit unique, where Los Angeles can reasonably make the argument that it's an up-and-coming team, tremendous prospect pool, a lot of quality on the roster already, getting some really quality performances out of its veterans and young players, who is essentially a great goaltender away from being able to make some noise. And that's exactly the type of team that you might imagine, if they can negotiate an extension with Hellebuck as part of a deal, would be willing to part some tremendous future assets for a player like that, because they have so many of them, in part. And, you know, they've had a lot of picks and have drafted well. Byfield would be incredibly intriguing, I think. I also, now that I've said it out loud, Edmonton makes a lot of sense if, depending on what happens to them in the playoffs. But if they come out of it believing that Stuart Skinner isn't the answer, and Jack Campbell is a spent force, you might get desperate in Edmonton thinking, oh my goodness, you're running out of the Draisaitl and McDavid window. You finally have a well-rounded team, you know, at forward and on defense. You desperately need a goaltender. There might be some flexibility for trades in that sort of situation. But that's who you're looking for if you're trading Connor Hellebuck, those teams that are that close, because you believe that they can sign him to an extension. And if they can do that, then they're more likely to part with those high-end futures. and Byfield's is a great pull. I'd be delighted if I got to cover a player like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's 6'5", and we've talked a lot about size. I mean, you certainly have to have a certain level of potential offensively to be picked at that spot, and the timing might be right for the Kings to potentially move on a player like that, which is a high cost to pay, but that is certainly what the Winnipeg Jets are going to be asking for or expecting if they're trading one of those players. And wouldn't that be interesting if the two centers go for other things, maybe even a goalie coming back, and the goalie trade is what actually gets you potentially a center of your future? All I know is that this is going to give us plenty to kick around for the next couple months as we get into the draft. Murat, fill people in on, I know we sort of talked about what maybe one of your next pieces is right now, but it is that list for Kevin Cheveldayoff. Whether we got much of it on Sunday or not, it's pretty clear that this is a long list and a more unique and pivotal offseason that we've ever seen. Well, certainly probably seen in the 2.0 era.
Yeah. I don't know if you get this, Huss, but your friends and acquaintances who might be casual Jets fans as opposed to the diehards who are in the chat right now or who follow with The Athletic, they'll ask you stuff like, hey, so does your life just get quiet now? And then you sort of laugh because you know that the offseason that is and the amount of passion to figure out what happens to these guys next, it's through the roof. There are times when my offseason numbers are bigger than my in-season numbers. The dedication to finding out where this team is going is that intense. So yeah, I can preview the pieces. I mean, I have one that went up minutes before we spoke, which was just continued reflection on the idea of an organization handling conflict. Rick Bonus's comments, Kevin Cheveldayoff's comments, the players as well, and this belief that at this stage of, we talked about it, of adulthood and competition, there has to be mechanisms in place to be pissed off at each other and to handle it in a productive manner. That is success to me. I think that teams get better when they can handle it productively. So I sort of think out loud on that. But I got the off-season to-do list going up tomorrow morning. Talked about a lot of what we discussed, the defenseman situation as well, prospects of the future, the centers, the goaltender, it's all there. I've got a call for a mailbag up right now, so there's still time to ask questions for that. It's gotten heated, as I'm sure you wouldn't be surprised. I'm going to be putting together a fan survey coming up as well, get reflections on the season, features on a couple of guys as well. It's a busy time. It's a busy time to be in the Jets media market, that's for sure.
Well, and you know what? It's funny you mentioned those numbers. I mean, we were joking yesterday that around now last year was when Barry Trotz got the pink slip, and that sort of began, a wild summer for us. The numbers were bigger than it plenty of times in the regular season, even the playoffs throughout. And to be honest, I think this is going to be an even crazier summer right now, because a lot of the things we expected to happen last summer didn't, and now it almost seems like it or not, they are going to be forced to do some things, and this team is going to look a lot different. I don't think there's many people that would disagree that probably is a good thing for the Winnipeg Jets, considering the way they bowed out of the playoffs. Murat, always great having you on the show. Have a great one. Enjoy the weather outside. A little bit more like LA than it was when you were going back and forth in the winter.
Yes, sir. Thanks so much, Huss. Look forward.
Great stuff. There's Murat Atesh. Hot off the presses at The Athletic, his latest piece, and make sure to check that one up coming up tomorrow that we just discussed about. Well, it was great to talk CFL Draft with Ted, and next week we'll have rookies in town. Bomber camp starting a few days later, and by the end of the month, CFL preseason. Our Princess Auto Bomber reports will be hot and heavy coming up. Looking forward to getting DB back on the program. And, of course, I know I've spent a lot of time talking with Hammer about the Jets all season long. Jeff's going to be all over the Bombers as well. When we talk Bombers on the show, we do it for Princess Auto, proud sponsors of the Blue and Gold, and, of course, hosts at the Princess Auto pregame tailgate party. Princess Auto is where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Pop by and see them at one of two Winnipeg locations, Panet Road or Portage Avenue West. And you can always shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. And with things greening up outside, folks, and the weather getting nice, it's time to hit that lawn up. Now, the golf courses have been prepared, well, for a few weeks, and that, of course, is one of the big things they do with our friends at Consolidated Supply, who are the leaders in irrigation systems and artificial turf. If you do need some irrigation for your property, give Joe a call over at Consolidated Supply. He'll be able to help you out. Or if you maybe work on that dream putting green or something really cool for the backyard. They're, of course, the leader in golf carts as well as the exclusive club car dealer. Used and new golf carts available down at the showroom. But they've also got some other great options for your property. Tons of amazing hot tubs and amazing outdoor kitchen options as well, not to mention small engine parts and repair. Pop by and see them at Consolidated Supply, open to the public, 1395 Niagara Road East, or find out more online at cte.ca. Oh, man, our friends at Royal Sports are ready for spring and summer. They're Manitoba's #1 sports superstore with the biggest and best selection of licensed team gear, featuring the Jets, Bombers, NHL, NFL, tons of new Jays and Major League Baseball gear here with the start of the season, and more. And of course, spring stock is arriving daily for soccer players, baseball players, softball players, tennis players, and more. They've got it all, and a huge selection of bikes as well. It's got to be seen to be believed, the biggest and best sports store, maybe in the country, Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway. Follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina. Now, big playoff action tonight in the Western Hockey League. Big playoff action in the American Hockey League tonight. And, of course, 2 more games and 2 series starting tonight in the National Hockey League. Unfortunately, BP is no longer our whiteout headquarters, but it still is your fan headquarters for the best place to get together with your friends and watch Stanley Cup playoff action. Check out their new menu powered by Fanalytics, including the brand new triple play combo with the Bandera bread, the cactus cuts, and of course the Thai chicken bites. And check out those new fried dill pickle spears that everyone's talking about as well. Make an appointment today with your pals to get down and watch playoff hockey, and of course the Blue Jays at Boston Pizza. And if you're staying in, you can always order online at bostonpizza.com. All right, well, as I mentioned, the Winnipeg Ice are within 1 game of moving on to the Western Hockey League Championship Series, up 3-0 on Saskatoon after their big win last night. Brad Lambert and the Seattle Thunderbirds up 2-1 on the Kamloops Blazers in the West Conference Championship Series. And it has seemed for a while like maybe Winnipeg and Seattle have been on a bit of a collision course, but there is still work to do. That work might be completed tonight if the Ice can get it done. Friday would be Game 5 here in the Peg, but I'm sure they'd love to come back and rest a little bit. Let's get the latest on the Ice as they go into a clinching opportunity in Saskatoon tonight, right now, with Brian Munz.
Brian, great to have you back on the program. And, man, what a start to round 3 for the Winnipeg Ice. They seem to be really rounding into form at the most important time of the season.
Hey, guys, good to catch up again for sure. Yeah, it's been a tremendous postseason so far, obviously, with what they've been able to do through round 1 against the Medicine Hat Tigers, a good test into round 2 against the Moose Jaw Warriors, and now this Eastern Conference Championship Series. Everybody back in Winnipeg was able to see games 1 and 2, of course, back on Friday, Saturday, but I just talked to head coach James Patrick. We'll have it on the pregame show coming up tonight at 7:30 on just kind of how that first game played out here last night in Saskatoon, Game 3. I think everybody was a little curious how the series would shift inside SaskTel Center, and it was pretty much the perfect storm. Like, they get a power play 2.5 minutes in, takes 10 seconds for Matt Savoy to be able to get that game's opening goal. Benson and Friesen score 45 seconds apart a little bit later on in that opening period. They're out to a 3-0 lead, and in my opinion, kind of never really looked back and just took that game away. There was, a tiny bit of pushback from Saskatoon when it was 4-1, but Winnipeg's played extremely well in the series so far.
Well, and I mean, we'll get to the path maybe that beforehand, but I mean, 2 just big-time performances at home to get off to a great start. And, they had lost a game in the first series and a couple in the second, but it seemed like they realize what goes in. And I think this probably goes back to, the run that they had last year coming up to this far. I mean, realizing how laborious it is and how much toll it takes on teams to play long series. And quite clear that this Ice team realizes there's an opportunity to get a big head up on whoever they'll play in the WHL championship if they can take care of this series in quick fashion.
Yeah, Huss, they got a test against Medicine Hat in round 1. And I think, when you look at the score, you look at the end result, it was a 4-0 sweep, but it wasn't easy games that they played, right? So I think that was good. It was a good experience for Medicine Hat, too. They're kind of at the low end of the cycle, and they're on their way building back up. You look at the Moose Jaw series, and you and I and Remo were kind of talking about this before we came on the air here this afternoon, then it was good for Winnipeg to get a push against the Warriors. Like, they've got a good hockey team there. You look at Jagger Firkus, a Seattle draft pick. You look at Denton Matejchuk from Dominion City, Manitoba, drafted by Columbus. You've got Braden Yager, who's going to be probably a first-round draft pick coming up this summer in Nashville. You've got a 40-goal scorer in Atlee Calvert, who's a local kid that's an older player. The list goes on and on. Ryder Korzak started the year in the American Hockey League, a New York Rangers draft pick. They had Connor Unger, one of the top goaltenders in his final year of eligibility. So all in all, like, Mark O'Leary's got a really good hockey team there. Don't forget about Max Wanner, who's an Edmonton pick. Merrick Howell's a young 16-year-old that is going to be a star. Lyndon Lakovic as well. Like, they've got a really good team. Like, to me, personally, Saskatoon, Winnipeg, Moose Jaw, those are the top 3. So to have those 3 teams as kind of the final ones going here towards the end of playoff play in the Eastern Conference was the way it should have been.
Well, and I mean, let's get back to, we may as well touch on round 2 because, the Ice, they didn't get they lost a game at home. They went on the road. They were down 2-1 and had to salvage that game in overtime to prevent going down 3-1. And, when you look at teams, the championship caliber teams that go on long playoff runs, at times through the postseason journey, you really are pressed. And I would imagine the midpoint of that series in round 2 was the point where the Ice probably proved a lot to themselves, but bottom line stepped up and was able to get past a hell of a challenge from a team that many people thought was right there with Winnipeg as far as the top team in the East.
Yeah, if they wouldn't have lost those players for 6-7 weeks, I think they would have been the number 2 team in the standings just based on what they had done prior to. So I think all the way through, when you look at when they came back, the Warriors were kind of the team they thought they were, to steal the old phrase from the National Football League. But, I don't think it's wrong, and I don't think it's a bad thing to get a little bit of a push early in the playoffs. And, James Patrick uses the word process a lot, no matter whether you're leading into a game or you're inside that 60 minutes of competition. If you play the system, if you work your process to the right way, that they've got it all the way through with this group, good things are going to happen, because there's no team in the Eastern Conference that has the depth that Winnipeg does. If you just want to go down the middle right now with Matt Savoy, Zach Ostapchuk, and Connor Geekie, you've got a first-round pick. You've got another draft pick that's won 2 gold medals for Canada at the World Junior Hockey Championship. And you got a first-round pick as well in Geekie. So, nobody's been able to match that so far. Now, when you look at what's going on in the West, then you'd have a different conversation between Kamloops and Seattle. But the Ice are the kings of the East right now, and they've got 4 opportunities to wrap it up here starting tonight.
Brian Munz with the Winnipeg Ice getting ready for Game 4 tonight in Saskatoon. Ice leading 3-0, can book a ticket to the WHL Championship with a win. You mentioned how deep the team is at center. That being said, this top line of Savoy, Benson, and McLennan are a nightmare right now for opposing teams. I mean, you watch these young men play together all year long. I mean, have they taken it to an even bigger, better level right now when it matters most?
Yeah, I think they have. I think that's a great assessment by you, that they're getting better as the postseason continues. And it's kind of hard to believe when you think of the regular season that they were able to put together. And it goes back, like, GPU's those guys together at some points last year. They haven't always been together, right through this last couple of year run. But when they were reunited, first of all, start off ice, like all 3, this whole team is really, really tight. That, to me, being behind the scenes is one thing that's been a lot of fun to watch them kind of mature and grow and develop as young men, because let's not forget, these aren't pro players yet. They're 16 to now, a couple of them are 21 years old. So you've kind of got that maturity to learn exactly what it takes to play at a high level and be an elite team and have that bullseye on your back and be able to answer the call each and every night. And, Benson, Savoy, McLennan are getting the other team's best each and every game, and they're still able to find the score sheet as often as they are. So that says a lot for me with the integrity that they play with, how fast they play the game right now, and really how much confidence and how much fun they're having together.
It's easy for us to, talk about all the high picks and the high scoring forwards, but you can't win without goaltending. And what a performance, even a shutout in game number 1 of this series against a very good team. I mean, that's also been a constant for this team throughout the season. Very strong play in the pipes.
Yeah, and both guys have been really good. Like, Daniel Hauser's been Daniel Hauser kind of since day one. When you look at
all he does is win.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it is just kind of cruising down here real quick. His postseason record through his entire playoff career now sits in 25 games at 19-3 with a 2.3 goals against average and 911 save percentage. And, when he kind of had a couple of off games earlier on, Mason Bulpett jumped in, and with the amount of play and the amount of rubber that he saw as a member of the Spokane Chiefs, he was brought in for that reason and handled it extremely well right now. So they do have a ton of confidence in both players. Bulpett's a drafted netminder for the San Jose Sharks, and they've got a good thing going back there for sure.
Munzie, if we remember last year, I mean, the team had that incredible season. I think most observers that, understand the process, to use a word that the coach uses, of a team growing to that championship caliber, thought that, that amazing season the Ice had was maybe a little ahead of schedule. This was the year that I think that they'd focused on having their best chance. But, you have the season they had. They made it all the way to that series against Edmonton. How do you think the run in the playoffs, of which most of these players were a part of, prepared them to go the distance this year?
It was instrumental, because you hear the old cliche, and I guess I believe it a little bit, but I think it's always way more fun than losing. But they always say you need to lose before you learn how to win. The players that are back on this year's team took that on the chin, right? Like, and hey, full credit to Brad Lauer's Edmonton Oil Kings. Like, they were the better team in the series. They were bigger, they were stronger, they were faster. They had a more complete game. Sebastian Cossa was fantastic in net, was moved on in the Red Wings organization now. Last year was their team, and they answered the phone. And Winnipeg understood when they got into that 5-game series what they needed to do at this point in the playoffs where we are right now. And I think if you talk to Mark O'Leary and Moose Jaw, if you talk to Brendan Sawney of the Saskatoon Blades, their team's kind of going through that school day visit that Winnipeg had last year against Edmonton, that those teams are having against the ice right now. So I think it was really big. And to me, the biggest thing when you get this deep is the physical toll that it takes on these players involved. And I think that's when you look at guys like Ostapchuk and Paterson, Briley Wood, Connor Geeky's got some size, Easton Armstrong, Ty Nash, kind of those gritty guys that really round things out up front. You've got Ashton Cumby that's coming into the series now when Wyatt Wilson went down with an unfortunate injury. Like, he's a big 16-year-old kid that doesn't log a lot of minutes, but when he's out there, he eats up some time, throws some checks. And then, your other defensemen have been able to play extremely well. Graham Swart's been arguably their most consistent defenseman all the way through the entire playoffs. And the second half of the regular season, he came in from Spokane as well, a Nashville draft pick. And he's kind of flown under the radar a lot. But when you watch this club live, they wouldn't be where they are right now without the play of 44. And that's no slight on anybody else, but he's been that good.
Munzie, just on that point, I mean, I'm locked and loaded with some buddies to get out to Game 5 on Friday night. I would love to see the game, but from an ice perspective, from what you just mentioned, there is a big, big opportunity right now to finish the job, get some extra rest, and prepare for what will be a hell of a WHL championship series if they're able to make it through. And let's not forget, Saskatoon did go down 3-0 in their last series and win 4 in a row, and I'm sure that's not lost on the ice. But it would be massive for this club to have a few extra days while Kamloops and Seattle beat the hell out of each other, waiting to see who gets to play the ice if they're fortunate enough to win one more game in the series.
Yeah, and they're going 5 for sure now because Kamloops was able to win back on home ice last night over Seattle. So watching that one obviously with keen interest, but you're right. There's no looking past this game for sure. Saskatoon, like they always say, game 4 is the hardest to win. And, we saw that in the Medicine Hat series that went right down to the wire. And we saw that in round 2 against Moose Jaw as well, that elimination game. Now, Winnipeg was able to go in there and kind of take advantage early. And by the midway point of the first period, the game was over. But leading your way into it, there's no celebration. There's no party planning as of yet for this team. They're handling it the right way, which is a good sign for me. But you're right. If the Blades are able to win, we're excited to come back home for Game 5. A reminder, it's a 6 o'clock face-off on Friday night heading into the weekend. So we would look forward to a fantastic atmosphere again inside the Ice Cave at Wayne Fleming Arena. There was over 6,000 people here in Saskatoon last night, and it was a ton of fun inside SaskTel Center. So if Winnipeg's not able to get it done, we'll look forward to seeing everybody back home on Friday.
Yeah, and otherwise, we'll get planning for what should be an amazing WHL Championship Series. Have a great call tonight. Good luck to the Ice, Munzy, and win or lose, we'll see you back in the Peg later on this week, and start planning for the next time we'll see the Ice playing at the Ice Cave as they continue their quest for a WHL Championship and a trip to the Memorial Cup. All the best, pal.
All right, thanks, Huss. Hey, nice work on the background too. You guys have been chipping away when you're off air, eh?
It's a process. It's a process.
Yeah, that's good.
Thanks, man. We'll talk to you soon.
See you guys.
All right, good stuff with Munzy, and good luck to the Ice tonight. I'll be honest, I wouldn't be too upset if they lost because I was going to go to the game on Friday, but we can always save it for the championship series against hopefully the Seattle Thunderbirds and Big Bad Brad. The Lambeau looking pretty good with his junior team right now, and that'll be great here in the city of Winnipeg if that does happen. We talked about Goldeye Camp beginning today. Well, we are counting down 19 days until opening day at Assiniboia Downs and the resumption of the great wagering rivalry between myself and Michael Remis. We each have one season. This year is our tiebreaker. We'll be doing our favorite picks at the track for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, live racing out at Assiniboia Downs. But in the meantime, mark it on your calendar, May 22nd, opening day. And you can check out the full live racing schedule at AS Downs. Everything going on this week, but nothing better than getting out to the track, having a little fun with the ponies, and checking out that incredible food up in the dining room at Assiniboia Downs and everything else that comes with the trip to the track. Again, asdowns.com. And you can always open up a wagering account at HPI Bet to bet online at tracks around the world and Assiniboia Downs. Also looking forward to getting out to the ballpark and enjoying a few Little Brown Jugs. I just love this generic lager that they've just launched. If you haven't tried it, you need to get on it. If you do like traditional light beers, it's your basic lager, just better. Standard in the best way, light and clean to taste with a mellow flavor and crisp finish. Now Manitoba can support local without having to move away from the domestic taste they've come to expect with a light beer. Available in 8-packs or by the can through our tap room or through vendors. You can also pick it up at Liquor Marts, and it should be single cans in Liquor Marts by next month. Wells Fargo Championship in the PGA Tour this week. Elevated event. All the big boys there. We hit on the lock shop. But while I know PGA Tour fans will be looking forward to hopefully getting a great Sunday, local golfers are back out on the course. And big shout out to Corey and the gang at Breezy Bend, the incredible staff, Craig and his team getting the course ready to go. And it is on. First men's night was yesterday. First T-balls were hit on the weekend. And we are all systems go at one of Manitoba's premier private clubs, championship course, top-notch practice facilities, and the best 19th hole around on their beautiful course side patio. Find out more at breezybend.ca or call our pal Corey Johnson for more information about becoming a member. And I just got a message from Pitt and the gang over at Aikens Lake. The Aikens team is ready to go. I know I'd been mentioning that for university students, if you were thinking about a summer in paradise, you might want to throw a resume into Pitt. And they've pretty much taken care of the entire team, although they are looking for one final team member for the serving housekeeping job out at Aikens Lake. So if you know of someone that might be a great fit for that, send them a resume into Pitt at Aikens Lake. And in the meantime, now's the time to go to aikenslake.com and inquire about availability for this season. They're pushing over 90% booked for the entire year. Had a couple of amazing years coming out of the pandemic. It truly is a world-class experience that the Aikens experience provides, not only with the world-class fishing, but as great as the fishing is, the hospitality is even better. Find out more on corporate packages, friends and family trips right now at aikenslake.com. All right. We still have a few things to get to on this program. A couple funny things relating to Leaf fans, which I'll get to in a minute, but let's quickly get to the Coolbet lines. And we do have word, Remo, that Mark Stone is a go for tonight. I know there was some probably nervous Knights fans after what we saw from that video from practice yesterday. He's going to play tonight, which is good news for Vegas. They are a home underdog, though, going up against the Edmonton Oilers, plus 102 for Vegas, minus 120 for the Edmonton Oilers. And actually, both road teams are favored in the series. The Devils not favored tonight, though. Even money for the Devils on the road against the Hurricanes, and minus 117 for Carolina. Series bets up as well, and the numbers are already up for tomorrow's games, with the Leafs and Dallas being pretty significant home favorites. If you want to get a sprinkle in on the golf on the weekend, check today's lock shop for our picks. The Wells Fargo Championship is up, and I will direct you to the exclusives. We've got a lock shop partner parlay today with Dusty. He's been killing it with these Oilers single game wagers. It's a plus 485er with Draisaitl to score, Nuge and Bouchard to get a point, over 5.5, and the Oilers to win. But my favorite one, and we were all over this as soon as we saw it, our pal Pat Gregoire, the Greggy's Golf Special, Cam Young and Victor Hovland to finish top 20 at Wells Fargo. That one's at plus 365, bottom right corner of it. For the golf boosted odds specials. So lots going on right now. Major League Baseball playing right now, a bunch of Blue Jays exclusives, and of course, hockey and basketball playoffs, golf going on right now. And it's all there at Coolbet for you. If you haven't played a Coolbet before, use the promo code WST for a 100% bonus on your first deposit up to $200. All right, Remo, we've got a couple of fan things to talk about. Although, do you want to get to we're now, I guess, into Jets off-season reports via Instagram, aren't we?
Yes. Locker cleanout day was the weekend, and they're off. We're trying to see, okay, where are these guys? What are they going to do? We always enjoy what they post on social media, so here we are. This is what we're going to have to do now for the rest of the summer because, there's no games. Okay, what are they posting on Instagram? Here's Nikolai Ehlers' story. He's already in Denmark. Aalborg, Denmark. He tagged location. Looks lovely.
Beautiful spring scene in Aalborg, Denmark.
Nice patio furniture.
His little dog running around, little toy dog.
Big fields. Shout out to Nikolai Ehlers.
Of course, Ehlers did mention that he may be playing again quite soon. I'm sure he'd love to represent Denmark at the World Championship coming up soon. And then we've got a Dubois. And again, this might be kind of the last we ever really see of Pierre-Luc Dubois. I kind of felt like when he walked out of the room on Saturday, and I actually saw him a little later on signing a few jerseys and things as players do on that final day, that might be the last time he was on the home side of the Winnipeg Jet dressing room. And Dubois got all systems go right into the offseason doing what a lot of us do when we're off work for a while. Play video games.
Yeah, here's not only video games. I guess this is considered retro now. He's got PS2. I think that's the mini PS2. That's not the fat PS2. and he looks like he's playing NBA Street. I think NBA Street 3, I'm going to guess, because this doesn't look familiar. I never played that one. But he's also got a TV on the ground. So he didn't tag the location like Ehlers did, but yes, I like what Pierre-Luc Dubois is doing. NBA Street with the TV on the floor. Well done, PLD. I'm a big fan now.
Listen, I've been there's nothing worse in life than moving.
Yes.
Most people will agree with that. But as a bachelor for most of my life, been known to throw a tube on the floor every now and then.
TV?
I mean,
no, you got to
get it in, get it hooked up, and get to work on whatever we were doing. Now, I have not played that version of NBA Street, although I do love the potential matchup of Yao Ming and Derek Anderson that he's setting up in his choose players selection. But anyways, Dubois, listen, as you can tell, the guy doesn't know what he's having for dinner, doesn't know what he's going to put his TV on, doesn't know what he's going to play next year. There's a lot of balls up in the air for Pierre-Luc Dubois. Mm-hmm. But sometimes you just got to kick it and fire up the PS2. And that's exactly what he's doing right now to begin his off season.
Love it. Love it. Patrolman Pete says the TV works just as well on the floor. That is correct.
True, Pete.
That's a good point.
All right. Our pal Jesse Pollock, but a true Winnipeg ambassador and Jet fan extraordinaire, has made he's made quite a few claims, quite a few proclamations in Toronto about the Jets. He said that he'd lick the floor at TSN if the Jets didn't make the playoffs. Well, they met the playoffs. They cashed our Coolbet futures. But unfortunately, he made that same prediction and declaration if the Jets did not beat the Vegas Golden Knights. And unfortunately, today, Jesse had to pay the price, Reem.
Yeah, he had to pay up. So we all want to see it, Huss. Here's the video of Jesse licking the carpet at TSN.
You know what? He goes all in on this. I mean, this is a guy that pays his wagers. He pays his bets. Jesse Pollock, a great, a guy that has a lot of scruples, a lot of honor, as you'll see right away. Prepare yourself for this one, folks.
I think this is our warning. Like something graphic in nature is going to be on the screen. So here it is.
I'm not doing a little one either.
That's so bad, man.
Listen, I don't know why in the world they're doing a lick the carpet challenge anyways. You probably couldn't get me to do that. But as Phyllis is saying, Jesse is a champ. Please, temporary. He's a Winnipeg gem. The carpet, that is nasty. He's got to go brush that tongue. No doubt about it. But a man of honor, a man of his word, and a great representative of Jet fans out east in a sea of Toronto Maple Leaf fans, which is where he was again last night, Remo, in Maple Leaf Square with all the Leaf fans going crazy. And I'm sure he's the one guy that was loving the win by the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, I'm trying to look if there's the picture. Oh, yeah, here he is taking a selfie. He's writing, "I dare you to go to Maple Leaf Square next round." Every rotten-ass Leafs fan on Twitter. So I think it was Waiters in chat said there's two types of NHL fans, Leafs fans and Leafs haters. Or he said the two biggest fan bases in the NHL are Leafs fans and Leafs haters. So shout out to Jesse. And
you know what? We'll have to we'll hook up. We'll try and get Jesse on maybe next week to jump on, see how he's doing, managing the Leafs in the second round and the Jets being out. And certainly, this is sort of the guy that you want to make a bet with. He is paying his dues. Now, some would say that Jesse's a bit of a Leafs troll and was trolling them last night. But before we go, we have to hit this. This is next level trolling and very expensive trolling. Just get the first pick, if you could, of the guy at the Tampa game and then him back at the Florida game in round 2, if you would. So here you go, folks. This is from game 1, round 1, game 1. A guy, and it looks like his daughter wearing Tampa Bay Lightning gear, cheering for the Lightning. Okay, whatever. That happens at games. Here's a shot from last night's game 1. It's the same guy, the same daughter now in Florida Panthers jerseys. And people were wondering, like, what the heck is going on? Well, upon further review, there's a lot of people that are going to really love this guy here in the Winnipeg Sports Talk chat. He apparently is a season ticket holder for the Toronto Maple Leafs, paying what looks like huge money for those seats for the entire year, and comes to every single game wearing the jersey of the other team and trolling Leaf fans. I mean, this is as committed and expensive a troll job as I have ever heard in my entire life, Reem.
There was an article about him in the Toronto Star, and they showed, like, here's the article, and let me bring my screen. Anyways, I can't find it. Anyways, here they are in Habs jerseys. Oh, yes, here's the one. Here, check this one out. He's got Avs, Kraken. There's the Canadians, Flyers jersey. Pretty incredible. Good for this guy.
He's obviously got a lot of money for those tickets and for all those jerseys. But yeah, his daughter said she's been going with her dad to Leaf games for as long as they can remember, wearing the opposition's jersey and cheering against the Leafs every single game pretty much he's ever been to of her life.
So he's,
as Bravo Brian said, this man is a national treasure.
I think so. I don't know if does anyone do anything like this, especially in the market with the most expensive tickets. So he's a Montreal fan, it says, and maybe they had so much fun they're doing it. And I think they bought that reverse retro jersey like right before the game, like the day of the game. Good for them. That's pretty funny. I mean, you get on TV. They're on TV every game. They always, because I think they said he was the only Tampa fan there, and they went down after one of the games, and they say, "Oh, a Tampa fan," and they got some autographed memorabilia from the players. So that's great.
Oh man, that is funny stuff. And as I say, you know what? There's trolling, and there's a lot of low-level trolls that hang out on social media. This is what all of you need to aspire to be. We always talk about the term FU money. Well, this guy obviously has FU money, and he's using that FU money to go to the arena, Scotiabank Arena, and do an FU job on the Leafs every single night that he goes to the games. I laughed so hard when I saw that last night, and knowing how triggered many of you in the chat are that the Leafs have finally made it out of the first round and actually have a really good team this year, I knew that would warm many of your hearts today, and it was a perfect way to finish up for today's show. Hey, before we go, Remo, good luck to the Moose. Good luck to the Ice. Dan Fink will join us tomorrow on the program. We'll also have more Jets Aftermath, Billick, and Rewicki jumping on the program. And don't forget, we gave out our final Unsung Hero today to that great volunteer from Corden Community Center, and really looking forward to having Josh Morrissey hook up with us on Friday, talk a little bit about the season past, of course, his work with the Dream Factory, and round up the Unsung Hero program for the year, courtesy of our friends at Wallace and Wallace. Doubleheader tonight, Canes and Devils early, Oilers and Vegas late, starting at 8:30. And, of course, you can check the Moose on AHL TV. Keep it locked to your social feeds. And, of course, Kevin O will have, I think Munzy said the pregame show starts at 7:30 with Kevin O. So, you know where to find that. But have a great time. Maybe get outside a little bit. Fire up that barbecue because spring is here. And we'll have a big show tomorrow with much more Jets Aftermath, off-season talk, and the latest on the Jets, or the Ice and Moose in the playoffs, and of course everything happening tonight in the Stanley Cup Playoffs. Thanks again to the sponsors that make this show happen every day. Everyone that joined us today live on YouTube, make sure you hit that red subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, tell a friend about WST, and most of all, make sure you join us here for Winnipeg Sports Talk tomorrow, live at 1 p.m. on YouTube. Have a great night, everyone.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.